Right now, if you own a home, or you're saving to buy one, or you've ever inherited money from a parent, you're standing inside a system. You probably never questioned where that system came from. But in one American city, for one weekend in 1921, that system was violently interrupted for an entire community. Wealth that took generations to build was burned to the ground in under 24 hours. And for most of the last century, almost nobody taught you it happened at all. The place was Tulsa, Oklahoma. The neighborhood was called Greenwood. And in the early 20th century, it was known across the country by a name it had earned: Black Wall Street. Here's what almost nobody tells you. Greenwood wasn't a poor neighborhood scraping by. It was one of the most prosperous black communities in the entire United States. More than 300 black-owned businesses operated within about 35 blocks. Grocery stores, law offices, movie theaters, hotels, 2 newspapers, a hospital. Doctors, dentists, and attorneys lived and worked there, many of them serving a community that white-owned businesses elsewhere in Tulsa refused to serve. Because of segregation, dollars earned in Greenwood tended to stay in Greenwood, circulating from business to business before ever leaving the neighborhood. Economists studying the community later estimated that money changed hands locally many times over before it left. That's not an accident. That's what real, self-sustaining wealth looks like. Then came the night of May 31st, 1921. The spark, as later investigations confirmed, was almost absurdly small next to what followed. A young black man named Dick Rowland was accused of assaulting a white elevator operator named Sarah Page. What actually happened in that elevator has never been definitively established. Most historians now believe he likely stumbled and grabbed her arm, or stepped on her foot, and she reacted with a scream. Rowland was arrested. A local newspaper ran an inflammatory story about the incident, and within hours, a white mob gathered outside the courthouse, demanding he be lynched. A group of black World War I veterans, armed and organized, went to the courthouse to help protect Rowland from that mob. A scuffle broke out. A shot was fired. Nobody knows for certain by whom. And that single shot became the excuse a much larger white mob had been waiting for. What followed has been documented by a 2001 Oklahoma State Commission report, by contemporary newspaper accounts, by insurance claims filed in the aftermath, and by survivor testimony collected over decades. Thousands of white residents, some deputized on the spot by local authorities, swept into Greenwood. They looted homes and businesses. They set fires, block by block. Eyewitness and later forensic accounts describe airplanes, privately owned, allegedly used to drop incendiary devices onto buildings and to fire on residents fleeing below. Though the full extent of aerial involvement remains debated among historians. By the time the violence stopped, roughly 35 city blocks lay in ashes. More than 1,000 homes were destroyed. Estimates of the dead have varied wildly over the past century, from official counts as low as 3 dozen to historian estimates ranging into the hundreds, a gap that itself reveals how thoroughly the event was minimized in its own time. Survivors were rounded up and held in internment camps around the city, some for over a week, before being released, often only if a white employer vouched for them. And then, almost immediately, the story disappeared. Local newspapers scrubbed their own archives. Official records went missing for decades. Oklahoma schools didn't teach it. An entire generation of Tulsans, black and white, grew up in the same city without any shared public memory that it had happened. It wasn't formally investigated by the state until nearly 80 years later, when the Oklahoma Commission to study the Tulsa race riot of 1921 was finally convened and released its findings in 2001. Here's the part that connects directly to you, wherever you're watching this from. Historical wealth compounds. A family that owned a home or a business in 1920 could pass that asset to their children, who could use it as collateral, who could pass an even larger asset to their children after that. That's how generational wealth is built almost everywhere in the world. Greenwood residents had exactly that kind of wealth, and in a single night, most of it was converted to ash. Insurance companies denied nearly every claim filed by black residents, citing riot exclusion clauses. No one was ever criminally convicted for the violence. No restitution was paid at the time. Economists who have studied the long-term effects estimate that the destruction erased what would be worth well over $100 million in today's terms. And that's before accounting for a century of compounded growth that never got the chance to happen. Modern researchers studying the racial wealth gap in the United States point to events like Tulsa, alongside redlining policies that formally began just over a decade later, as part of why median black household wealth in America still lags dramatically behind white household wealth today. This isn't ancient history reaching forward in some abstract way. It's a direct, traceable interruption in the same kind of asset building that shapes financial security for families right now. In 2020, forensic archaeologists began excavating a site in Tulsa's Oaklawn Cemetery, searching for a mass grave referenced in old records and survivor accounts. They found it. The excavation is still ongoing, still identifying remains, still trying to give names back to people who were denied even a documented death for 100 years. So think back to that home you own, or that down payment you're saving for, or that inheritance that helped your family get its start. For one community in Tulsa, that exact same kind of ordinary generational foundation was standing on the morning of May 31st, 1921. By the following afternoon, most of it no longer existed. And the story of how that happened had to wait nearly 100 years just to be officially told at all.